Diddy really screwed up, and I'm not referring to his criminal trial, which has him sitting in prison right now, but it has to do with something that happened right before he got arrested. If you've seen the Netflix documentary about Diddy, Diddy The Reckoning, which 50 Cent produced, there's some footage there that had never been seen before. This is a photographer that Diddy hired to follow him around and document his life. That footage ended up going to 50 Cent.
And maybe that's what Snoop went through. I don't know. But let the people know, because it was too early back then. You know, Pac just had died.
So this one night, 50 called me up, and, you know, they got him on the phone, man. He was just talking. We was talking about old time shit, you know, sit down with Black Hands, sit down with, you know, with Puff Kids, the whole Puff situation, and this documentary that he's going to be doing.
Almost overnight, the conversation took a sharp turn. A fresh wave of online videos and commentary started pulling attention in a completely different direction, this time focusing on Snoop Dogg. Across social media, bold claims began spreading fast. Some posts suggested he was under pressure, others hinted he was laying low, and a few went even further, implying there was unseen footage that could change the narrative entirely. None of it came with clear proof, but that didn't slow the momentum. The discussion didn't stop there. Certain voices brought up statements allegedly linked to figures like Gone Deal, while others questioned what 50 Cent's documentary really showed, and more importantly, what it might have left out. The speculation kept building, piece by piece, turning small assumptions into bigger theories. At the same time, people started watching Snoop Dogg closely, analyzing his reactions, or the lack of them. Every silence, every public move, was being picked apart and interpreted in different ways. But when you strip away the noise, the real issue hasn't changed. What part of the story is actually verified? And what part is just the internet connecting dots that may not even exist?
Check out this audio from Suge Knight. It's from his podcast with Dave Mays, and he's speaking on, you know, Tupac and Snoop being cool, and how, you know, after Tupac got killed, Snoop started hanging out with Diddy. And, you know, he also speaks on how, you know, Snoop, he did the Steve Harvey show with Diddy after Tupac got killed. Check this out.
Okay. It's downloading right now.
Then you look at the scenario how everybody used Pac to make their stuff famous or make their project better. You got people who use their songs for Pac and tell them how much they love Pac, but they do songs for Puffy. You got Steve Harvey, old bit that, you know, this motherfucker telling, well, Pac, according to everybody else, he brings Snoop and Puffy on there and say, these are dudes who's running this in the East Coast, West Coast.
What's up, Snoop?
Huh? Hey, whoa. Wait a minute, fellas here. Hold on. You know, I know all about this East Coast, West Coast rivalry thing here, but we in Chicago now. This rivalry stuff, we gotta stop it, man. We stop that, we stop a lot of this violence.
Yo, Steve, check this, man. All that East Coast, West Coast stuff is a bunch of media hype. It's been my dog from day one, you know what I'm saying? It's all good between me and him. That's my people.
Real, that's what we came in for. We came in and light it up and ride it up. We never knew your hand.
Now, Pac, if you love Pac so much, how you with the motherfucker everybody say got something to do with the first get down that happened to Pac in New York, then the second one.
What you think about Suge comments? And I've never asked you this before, but did you have an issue with Snoop hanging out with Diddy after Tupac got killed?
I always felt that was wrong. I'm gonna just keep it real. I'm talking about from that, like now, okay. You know what I mean? I'm 46, Snoop probably early 50s. If he figured out now he might go by the opinion like, okay, Puffy had nothing to do with Pac. You know, we grown now. If he want to be his friend, no problem. But back then that was just awkward. You know what I mean? And the reason why it was awkward to me that I never even like it because you knew how Pac felt about this individual. You know what I mean? Even if you don't agree with him, you probably could have said, you know what, I probably ain't gonna come out, you know, publicly with this because until things clear up. So I really know I could be certain that, you know, they didn't have nothing to do with Pac. But it's like, it was no, you know, okay, it is what it is. So that I never really respected that back then.
So you had an issue with it. You didn't like it.
Never really liked it. It just was a strange look because you was Pac boy. You know what I mean? Puffy, you know, it's clear they had some issues with Pac. And Pac died and all of a sudden you chilling with Puffy. Back then, it just, okay, now you can say what you want. You go all grandfathers, I guess. You know what I mean? That's different now. But back then, I think it was weird. It was tasteless. You know what I mean? It didn't seem like you really had that much love for Pac. You could have just, you know what I mean? Unless he pressured them or like questioned Puffy, like, yo, what's up with this? What's up with that? Then you could say, you know what I mean? No problem.
To be clear, Snoop Dogg's name is nowhere in official court records, indictments, or federal charges related to the case that led to Sean K's imprisonment. There's no documented legal link tying him to those proceedings. But online, that distinction didn't slow things down. As conversations spread, people began connecting dots on their own. A big reason for that is Snoop's long history in the industry. He's been part of hip-hop for decades, moving through the same circles as major figures from one of the most talked-about eras in rap. Names like Suge Knight, Sean Combs, and others often come up in that history, and because of that overlap, Snoop frequently gets pulled into broader discussions, even when there's no direct evidence behind the claims. Things escalated further after the release of related documentary content. Gone Deal became a widely referenced voice, especially after suggesting in interviews that certain details may not have made it into the final cut. That alone was enough to spark a wave of speculation. From there, the internet did what it usually does. Some narratives claimed that 50 Cent may have held back key information, while others pushed back, saying Snoop Dogg was being dragged into the situation simply because of his name and visibility. Old clips and past interviews, especially those involving Suge Knight, started resurfacing and circulating again, adding more fuel to the conversation. But underneath all the noise, the situation hasn't really changed. There's a difference between being part of an era and being part of a case.
I believe somebody mentioned that they seen a video with me and the dude Prodigy or one of the dudes from our Deep, as if I was with. They don't know the backdrop of that. I went to his hotel room ready to fight. Like, bro, I'll fight everybody in that room one-on-one. Even if I lose, it doesn't matter. The Outlaws was with me. My homie Tiny, the Mexican homie, was with me. I didn't go there and say, let me get in a video with these guys. I went there knocking on their door, doom, doom, doom. Tell them dudes to come out. What's up with your, what's up with your and Pop? You got a problem with Pop? Cause we could just fight like man to man, face to face, and then shake hands. That was my approach with them. But when they told me they didn't have no problem, I don't mind being with you. You know what I mean? I don't mind shaking your hand because they told me they had love for Pop. So that's different. You know what I mean? If he come out and say, well, I already, I questioned Puffy about it. I believe that he didn't, he loved Pop. That's my opinion. I can move the way I want to move. So when people try to, I noticed somebody, I think on your page do that. Well, Napoleon was in the video with Mobb Deep. They don't know how I got in that video with Mobb Deep. You know what I mean? I pulled up on them but I'm the type of person, I never been a bully type of person. You know what I mean? If I talk to a person like a man and they tell me face to face, look, I got love for Pop, I'm comfortable to know if I can look in their eyes and if I believe what they said, I have the right to say, okay, no problem. I believe you. You know what I mean? And maybe that's what Snoop went through. I don't know. But let the people know because it was too early back then. Pop just had died. You know what I mean? Like he had the right to say, the reason why I'm rolling with Puffy, I questioned him about my homie. He gave me this answer. So then he did what he had to do. But it just, you know what I mean? I never really agree with that, to be honest. The same way I couldn't be on the stage with him. When they wanted to do that tribute, I just couldn't do it. Like I really felt in my heart, like, man, I can't believe this.
This is the point where things can easily go off track. When people start treating association as evidence, the conversation drifts away from facts and moves into pure suspicion. And online, the loudest opinions often get mistaken for the truth, even when they're not backed by anything solid. It's important to understand what the documentary was actually meant to do. It wasn't designed as a full takedown of the entire hip-hop industry. Its focus stayed centered on Sean Combs, his rise through Bad Boy Records, his influence, and the environment that allowed him to build that level of power over time. The film leaned heavily on testimonies and broader allegations tied directly to him, including claims of control and exploitation. But it did not point fingers at Snoop Dogg. There were no accusations made against him, no footage suggesting involvement, and no direct claims connecting him to criminal activity. At the same time, some online narratives have suggested that 50 Cent may have intentionally left out information related to Snoop. The reality is, those claims remain unproven. There's no verified evidence supporting that idea. In fact, in interviews, Curtis Jackson has made it clear that anything included in his projects has to meet a certain standard, something that can be backed up and defended if challenged. So before jumping to conclusions, it comes down to a simple distinction: what's been confirmed and what's just being assumed.
Diddy was doing a documentary thinking he was going to come out triumphant.
Yeah, I didn't know that's how this started, is he started filming himself and getting this footage because he thought he was going to beat everything. Okay,
Diddy
that makes sense. Okay.
has a relationship.
Netflix. I knew that.
With
Ted Sarandis. I saw that. Yes. Okay.
And he's filming it there. But of course, when you get, obviously it wasn't a clean sweep on the prosecutor's side, but you're still going to prison.
Yeah.
He basically kind of scraps it. It's not also Netflix is saying, because they commissioned it, right? Netflix is saying, all right, cool, just turn over what you got. And what we'll do, we'll make it what it is because we're just following reality. Diddy's like, well, hold on now. If I lost the case, I'm down to still do it with you, but I got to be able to control it. Now, Diddy was probably going to kind of shape this doc to make it look like, hey, this was malicious prosecution. They kind of went really hard at me. Mm-hmm. I'm not a perfect guy, but I am a good guy.
Yeah.
And Diddy was like, I need to be able to craft it. And Netflix was like, no, you're not. And he's like,
well, my question is, did he sign the footage over to Netflix so they own it? Mm-mm. Like, how were they able to do this without his?
No, but he didn't pay for it. So essentially, they're calling it a payment error. Oh. So essentially, the deal falls apart, or he's like, yeah, we're not going to do this.
So awkward.
And the people who did the work that have all this footage, they're like, so wait, you told us to film because this is going to be on Netflix. Now you're saying Netflix doesn't exist and we're not getting paid because Diddy was going to pay with Netflix money. And Netflix realized this and they went to the filmers and said, hey, give us the footage.
If anything, the documentary took a more careful approach than what we usually see in today's media. Instead of chasing shock value, it stayed selective, only mentioning individuals when there was enough evidence or testimony to support it under serious scrutiny. That's exactly why the talk about missing footage doesn't hold much weight right now. There are no verified clips, no official records tying Snoop Dogg to the case, and no statements from investigators placing him under suspicion or investigation. What makes the situation even more interesting is what happened after the documentary came out. Snoop Dogg publicly showed support for 50 Cent, even sharing posts that suggested they were on the same page, not at odds. That kind of reaction doesn't really match the idea of someone feeling threatened or trying to distance themselves. Usually, if there's real tension, it shows up in silence or avoidance, not open support. So once again, the gap between perception and reality becomes clear. What's being suggested online doesn't always line up with what's actually happening in plain sight.
We're going to look at this through the prism of a modern-day rhetorical genius. A modern-day rhetorical genius. We're talking about the one, the great, the 50 Cent. All right. This guy's skill at rhetoric is absolutely next level. And this totally ties in with, how he famously is a big fan of Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Now, rhetoric with a capital R, I can just give you the definition of that. That's basically public speech, particularly public speech that is to persuade. Any persuasive public speech is rhetoric, right? Now, we kind of break that down into two subcategories of rhetoric with a lowercase r and dialectic. Rhetoric is essentially everything else. And really, what moves the needle with like 97% of people and 100% of groups, okay, is, in fact, rhetoric with the lowercase r. So again, stuff like this, 50 Cent is an absolute master of. Basically, he dropped this doc, this 50, this Sean Puffy Combs doc, and it's just kind of set the internet on fire. It's beating out Stranger Things. Like, it's a wild ride to watch, right? And one of the things that he does is he breaks down Diddy's character on Diddy's own terms.
The claims that keeps resurfacing online comes from testimony by Courtney Burgess. He stated that he had access to flash drives allegedly linked to Kim Porter, describing them as containing sensitive images and videos involving well-known figures. That alone was enough to ignite a wave of online content. Creators began building on the story, adding layers, assumptions, and in some cases, even naming additional celebrities, including Snoop Dogg. But here's the key point: none of those extensions have been verified. There are also direct pushbacks to consider. Kim Porter's children have publicly rejected the idea that any supposed memoirs or materials tied to her are authentic. On top of that, federal authorities have not confirmed the existence or contents of any such devices. From a legal standpoint, even if unverified material were to surface, simply appearing in it wouldn't automatically mean guilt. It would require proper investigation, context, and credible evidence before any conclusions could be drawn. As of now, there are no confirmed documents linking Snoop Dogg to these claims, and no authenticated footage has been released. What we're seeing here is a familiar pattern. A single claim turns into a rumor. The rumor gets amplified. And over time, repetition starts to blur the line between speculation and fact. But the legal system doesn't operate on assumptions. It depends on verified evidence, corroboration, and due process, standards that online discussions often ignore. So when you hear claims suggesting that Snoop Dogg is reacting out of fear because of these alleged flash drives, it's important to step back and look at what's actually confirmed. There's no record of him being questioned, no indication of an investigation involving him, and no legal action tied to his name. At this stage, the story being told online and the reality supported by evidence are not the same thing.
Because he wanted them to, both Suge and Pac.
In the car?
They only Pac, and they don't Suge. So allegedly, they got paid $500,000. The $500,000 was paid to the guy on the right, all the way to the right. You see the guy on the right? He's the one allegedly that got the $500,000. And that money never went to Keefe D or anybody else. The guy on the left is the one that stole the chain, the chain, which was a Death Row Records chain. That's a way of saying I got your rapper's chain. Because if you were one of the guys, Death Row. So long story short, this whole thing is a recording that he said this. So what does Diddy do? Rob, can you pull up this song? It's a song called Black Rob, featuring Mark Curry and Mario Winans. If you can just type in lyrics, okay? So he gets $1 million. Can you go to the lyrics? And Diddy's in the lyrics when he gets started. Go a little bit lower. Boom. Can you type in the word in there, Rob? Nice guy. Type Control F, nice guy. Okay, right there. Look at it. It's 1999. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Been nice too long. I'm just going to start making y'all disappear. Man, first I'm going to take your records off the radio. Then I'm going to erase your social security number. Take your birth certificate out flies. I'm going to do your whole effing family. Ain't nothing but mercy. And then, by the way, in the lyrics, he says, I'll drop $1 million on your head to erase you. Can you type in, I'll drop $1 million? Just put Control F. Just go to Google and type this out. I'll drop $1 million on your head. I'll drop $1 million on your head, and just put Diddy next to it. Right there. See, it says Black Rob. What song came up? I'll drop $1 million on your head. Erase you and your whole family, biatch.
Wow.
He's saying it in the song on what he did to get rid of Tupac.
What an idiot.
Over the years, Suge Knight has made a number of public claims involving Snoop Dogg. Some of those statements touch on personal disputes, while others go as far as referencing events connected to the death of Tupac Shakur. These comments tend to resurface whenever there's renewed interest in hip-hop's past. But it's important to recognize, they're not new, and they haven't been backed by verified evidence. A lot of these claims have come from interviews Knight has given while in prison, where controversial statements often gain attention quickly, especially when they involve well-known names. Snoop Dogg, on the other hand, has repeatedly pushed back against these accusations. He's described them as false, tying them to long-standing tensions and rivalries within the industry rather than any factual basis. And when you look at the official side of things, the picture stays consistent. Law enforcement investigations into Tupac Shakur's murder have never identified or charged Snoop Dogg as a suspect. So while the headlines may come and go, The core facts haven't changed. There's a clear difference between allegations that circulate publicly and conclusions that are actually supported by evidence.
For being out there and allowing Misa to come out there to make money, however she was doing it, to feed her family. He vowed down that it's like, yo, I ain't never fucking with her again, and I ain't never fucking with him again. Puff and Suge had a conversation behind the House of Blues about was we all right, and Tupac was alive. Tupac wasn't dead. So if it was a war, Suge ain't having no conversation with Puff about we good. I know he could be doing the Hoboken hustle, trying to fool him, brother. But had he killed my man or something like that, I wouldn't have no conversation with Puff. I'd been like, yo, you know what y'all niggas done? You know what happened? And it wasn't no conversation like that, brother. It wasn't no conversation whereas that, Suge made Puff feel like I'm going to get you a payback for what happened to Jake. This was more so that Puff, for whatever reason, Suge, for whatever reason, he was mad at Puff. And Puff, for whatever reason, he was mad at Suge. It was between them two. It wasn't no whole East Coast wanted the West Coast dead, and the West Coast wanted East Coast dead, because they still was going out, still chilling, still at places with each other. It was Bad Boy, and it was Death Row. It was no East Coast and no West Coast. West Coast dudes were still coming out on the East Coast getting love. East Coast niggas was still going out on the West Coast getting love. It was Bad Boy versus Death Row. And that's what it was, bro. And it was because of the two CEOs. But Suge tried to straighten it out. I got to get at the Suge. The Death Row East Coast, the Death Row East was going to bring in Eric B. It was going to bring in Big D. And those brothers was from the East Coast. So now they was looking for a representative to come to the meeting from Bad Boy so they could straighten out the between Hawk and Big and Death Row and Bad Boy. And Puff is the one who refused. Puff is the one to refuse to send a representative or either come himself. And got mad at Zip and them because they were in the Mirage on 57th Street partying with Suge Knight. Got mad at them. And Zip hung up the phone on him behind that.
Well, what you mean about?
There's a pattern you see online all the time, and it's happening here too. When a claim gets repeated enough, people start to treat it like proof. Not because new evidence shows up, but simply because they've heard it so many times that it begins to feel true. It's a powerful effect, and some creators lean into it because it drives attention and clicks. But in the middle of all that noise, one thing usually disappears: context. The history between Suge Knight and Snoop Dogg isn't simple. It goes back years and includes business fallout, personal disagreements, and very public clashes. That kind of background matters, because it shapes how their words, past and present, should be understood. When statements come from a place of rivalry or unresolved conflict, they can't be taken at face value. They need to be weighed carefully, not amplified blindly. Recycling old accusations in a new online environment doesn't make them stronger or more credible. It just puts them in front of more people. And visibility isn't the same thing as truth.
So, I don't know where you get all the extras from when they had a conversation at the hospital and all that. That's absolutely not true. Say less, if you know what I mean. But instead of just saying less, since I've been in here, Snoop and other people been having people trying to bail the guy out, Keefy D, because he talking too much. Raising them trying to do stuff for Puffy because they say he talking too much. They even had somebody talk to me and say, hey, you can help him get free. I said, look, I don't have nothing to do with none of that, and I'm not leaving prison to go to Nobody County Jail. To the point they were saying, well, you can't leave and sacrifice a little bit in the county jail to stop that black man from getting life? Hell no. I ain't wishing bad on him at all because I don't want to see nobody go to prison. And like I told you last time, as I find out more details about certain things, I probably would go to the Vegas County Jail if me and Keefy D with Sellies. We have a good conversation after I give him, six upside his head, another 6 in his body, and another 2. But yeah, that's definitely didn't happen with Snoop didn't go to the hospital. That's a lie.
Another idea that gained traction online was the claim that Snoop Dogg suddenly went quiet after the documentary dropped. But when you actually look at the timeline, that version of events doesn't really hold up. He didn't disappear. He stayed active, posting on social media, talking about music, handling business, and even showing public support for 50 Cent. The narrative of silence mostly comes from selective clips, where only certain moments are highlighted while everything else gets ignored. There was no account deletion, no emotional public response, and no sign of someone stepping away under pressure. If anything, it was business as usual. Snoop kept moving forward with his work, including projects tied to Death Row Records and other ventures. What's being framed as silence is really something else, a choice not to engage with rumors that haven't been verified. And in many cases, not responding isn't avoidance, it's simply not giving attention to claims that don't carry weight.
Just got out the gym, doing my workout box. Shit, you right. History would repeat itself. Cause nigga, you wasn't the only nigga in the room, nigga. You wasn't by yourself. There was other people in the room too. I'm not gonna say no names cause like you said, we don't talk. So why you on here talking? Let that go, man. And as far as Snoop and Corrupt writing my album, you ask them niggas that. Them niggas ain't wrote my album. Corrupt helped me with Do You See? Snoop helped me with This DJ. Other than that, everything else I wrote. So that's where you wrong at again. And as far as the tough guy, do you recall when we was at the World Club and it said Death Row and NWA? Who fired on that? Me. When you was at the Comedy Store, fighting that little buff ass at the Comedy Store, who saved your motherfucking ass? Me and C-Style. So what have I done to you? For you to launch out at me? Look, don't get mad at me, man. I ain't never done nothing to you. I wasn't signed to you. So,
at the center of all this discussion is a simple but important distinction: evidence versus perception. Sean K's case, including his conviction, came out of a formal legal process. It involved investigation, witness testimony, and court proceedings that led to documented outcomes. Whatever people say about it online, those findings exist within an established legal framework. Snoop Dogg's situation, however, is being discussed in a completely different way. The conversation around him is built on association, rumors, and interpretations drawn from online commentary, not from any verified legal action. As it stands today, there are no charges, no indictments, and no active investigations involving him. That matters, because in legal terms, absence of action isn't proof of hidden involvement. It simply means there's no substantiated case to proceed with. In times where public figures are heavily scrutinized, it's easy for lines to blur. But mixing confirmed cases with unverified claims creates confusion and can actually undermine real accountability when genuine evidence does appear. The key takeaway is straightforward. Public conversation doesn't carry the same weight as legal proof. And without verified evidence, assumptions remain just that, assumptions.
In a documentary, there's a couple things I'll share with you guys on what I took away from it. But Rob, maybe share the clip on how he got access to some of the footage of the documentary. Is this the one, Rob?
Yep.
Go for it.
How did you get that footage of Diddy?
I figure most journalists would not disclose their sources.
Does he know y'all have this in the doc?
I would doubt he knows.
So when this airs, that'll be the first time that his legal team, Diddy, that everybody knows that this footage is now seeing the light of day.
Perhaps. Combs' team firing back in a statement to NBC News, saying the Netflix so-called documentary is a shameful hit piece and that they relied on stolen footage that was never authorized for release. His team sending a cease and desist to Netflix.
So that doesn't mean it's not true. Of course. But they relied on stolen footage, okay, is what they relied on. And then they ask about the history of 50 and him, issue that they've had. What's the one you just pulled up, Rob?
This is where they talk about the feud, and then I also have 50 Cent talking about Diddy's reaction to the documentary.
Yeah, that's so funny. That is so funny. But watch this one here. Go ahead, Rob.
How do you respond to people who say that it's more about the disdain that you have for Sean Combs than it is for giving the victims a platform?
What they consider a pre-existing beef, right? For 20 years, right? Is me being uncomfortable with him suggesting that he takes me shopping, or I looked at it like it was like a tester. Like maybe you'll come play with me type of thing, right? And it's not personal.
I think it's important to also let people know that the show is not completely the perspectives of people that did not like Sean. We weren't trying to just get the highlights, the salacious details, that the real goal was to storytell. And not everyone needed to have an allegation to be a part of this project.
Yeah, I mean, so that's that part, right? The fact that the feud with the two of them, hey, let me take you shopping. Like, you say that to a girl, and 50's like, what are you talking about? Take me shopping. How do you ever flip a mind? You want to take me shopping? And then last but not least, Rob, the other clip you have of 50 is talking about how he thinks Diddy's going to like this documentary. Go ahead, Rob.
Sean Combs watches this. What do you think he's going to feel?
Like, wow, this is amazing. I think he's going to say this is the best documentary I've seen in a long time.
You can't even hold it.
Because you'll see people saying that. I mean, he may feel a different way about pieces and bits of it, but he knows the truth. I think he'll see the truth in it.
Right now, Snoop Dogg is being pulled into a very familiar online cycle, where uncertainty gets turned into accusation, past connections are treated like proof, and speculation slowly starts to feel like fact. But when you strip away the louder headlines and reaction-driven content, the verified picture is actually quite simple. There are no confirmed clips, no criminal charges, and no evidence showing any disappearance or withdrawal from public life. The idea that he is panicking or reacting in fear is mainly coming from interpretation, not documented reality. What this situation really shows is how quickly narratives can form when a major controversy is trending. In that kind of environment, simply knowing or having crossed paths with someone can be enough for people to assign suspicion, even without proof. As broader developments around Sean Combs continue to attract attention, the real issue isn't who gets mentioned next in online discussions. It's whether people are separating confirmed facts from assumptions. Because in the end, that line matters. Without it, public opinion can take shape long before any real evidence ever appears.